Hello everyone. This is Ted Simpson, Certified Bob Ross Instructor, and we're ready to do another painting here. Feeling like I have to squat down here. I've got my 12 by 16 canvas here. I don't have my spacer that lifts it up to Ted level, but we'll get through it. All right, I think I'm going to zoom in the feed here, and so that you can see the painting hopefully nice and up close. And let's go ahead and get this canvas prepped here. I've got my liquid white, and we're just going to make this go really fast using the 2-inch brush. And right off the bat, I spilled some. So, this is an oil-based paint medium, this liquid white. So if you do happen to get some on your clothes, don't fret too much. Any kind of degreasing soap, get some of that working into it, get it into the laundry, and it should come out. I would suggest not using it over carpet, just in case, but if you do, a little bit of paint thinner and lots of blotting. Blot, blot, blot. Don't wipe or scrub. But I'm teaching here on a vinyl flooring here, so it comes up fairly easily if you get at it right quick. If I show you the floor, you'll see many spots where I didn't get at it right quick. So, all right, let's see what we got here. There we go. A nice thin amount here. All you can see is a light fingerprint. And boy, this brush is getting old here. It doesn't have as much give. To give you an example here, here's a brand new one. You can see just that 1/3 of an inch or whatever makes a big difference. And then, you know, as you use it, the brushes, they get a little clogged up with some old residue and things like that, and the bristles do get stiffer over time. I've had this brush for a couple of years now. It's seen many paintings go by. And plus it's a student brush, and people using other people's supplies maybe aren't too worried about getting it super clean. But what are we going to do today? I don't know. I'm just going to kind of wing it here. Let me see. Let me find a 1-inch landscape brush and a little bit of phthalo blue. And let's just throw some color up there. Once again, I put out way too much paint on my palette. Once you start getting into this method and you practice a lot, you start to get more of a sense of how much paint you're going to need. And you start making these pictures with a lot less paint than you used to. Especially here for the sky, we don't really need much color. Typically, I'm only worried about it getting a little bolder up at the top, a little lighter as we work our way to the horizon. And then we just move on. What I'm going to try out here is I got a little bit of midnight black over here. We always try to beat it into the full width of the brush. See that? A little bit of the midnight black, a little bit of that blue. And let's hit it up here in these corners and blend it outward. Just a little bit there. Gives you a nice little sense of a darkening. Helps draw the eye into the center of the painting. Okay. And I'm going to give it a quick once over with this cleanish, dryish 2-inch brush. Work from the center up. Something like that. Now, I'm not even going to bother with anything down here. We're not going to have water in our scene today. I know. But that's all right. let us think here. I'm going to clean out my 1-inch brush. I've got my bucket of paint thinner and my beater bucket. Where's my beater bucket? It's way over here out of my way. There we go. Simple enough. Once again, yeah, this brush has seen a few paintings too. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to pick up a little bit of my titanium white, that thick, firm titanium white. And I'm going to drop a little in the center and work my way up. It wasn't light enough, or I made it a little too bold. So I'm going to work some white from the center up and lighten that up a little bit. Kind of give a nice haze in the sky. Isn't that nice? Just changes the flavor. Probably my favorite phrase Bob uses when he talks about the value of the color is flavor. So, let's see here. Speaking of flavor, I'm going to take a little bit of the mountain mixture. That's Bob's mix of red, blue, brown, and black. It's really just a really dark blue. I'm going to add even more black to it. I just want it even darker. Pull that out as flat as I can get it. Cut off a roll of paint. Ooh, maybe a bigger roll of paint. And let's make a mountain here. Something like this. Maybe a little taller right there. Alrighty, kind of letting the knife kind of do the work for me. Something like that. Maybe a little lump and a slide. All I care about is that nice, clean outside edge. And some people like to press in like that. Other times you can just kind of draw it out there. Whatever works for you. Pushing some paint into the fabric there. Wiping off the excess. Now I've got that liquid white there. The more I mess with it, the lighter it gets. Plus I just put that white, titanium white on there. You can see I covered a lot of it up, but still see a little bit right over the edge there. I like it. Let's just call that good. I'm going to get a clean brush here. Look at this. I'll just use this clean 2-inch brush. Gently press in and pull away. This is a pretty big brush. I might recommend using a 1-inch brush for that. If you find this one is getting away from you, just come on over and do that motion with the 1-inch brush instead. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Again, once you get some practice, you'll be able to do it with just about any tool in your arsenal. Just trying to make an interesting mountain shape, a little darker at the top, a little lighter and mistier at the bottom. All right. So, maybe a little bit of white. I tell you what, let's take a little bit of that white and let's add a touch of black to it. Just to make this not so super stark white. All right, let's see. Let's add a little more and see what happens. Ooh, there we go. Look at that. It always looks a little bolder on your palette than it does up here on the canvas. So you'll get the sense of what's starting to work for you. Kind of midnight black is a bit purpley. Light touch. Here we go, my friends. Very light touch. You literally just want that knife to barely skim create those breaks and holes there. I always say here, you don't want to just come in too flat and just touch paint to paint. You want that angle to help guide you in there as well. See that? You don't always have to make a huge travel. You know, that comes with practice. You got this nice roll. It's literally like a cylinder of paint. So it does make it tough here. As soon as I touch it and I start moving down, let's see if I can show you that. That cylinder, it now has a flat edge to it. So as you run out of paint, you're wanting to flatten that knife to keep the paint coming off. So Bob, like when he runs out of paint and he's down here, that knife is almost flat to the canvas to get out that last little bit. But you see here, if you take these in a lot lighter touches, don't worry about trying to make a 6-inch travel, you get a little bit more control. And whenever you need to, just stop and reload so you can find the angles that work for you. You see that? Just these little touches here. Most importantly, move on. Don't keep going and trying to spread some off. It really doesn't work like you think it will. It doesn't really move. And I tell you, you want it to move and you think it's going to move, it just won't. It'll just look like cream cheese on a bagel. It'll just keep getting thicker and thicker, and you lose all these little breaks and holes. Using the short edge of your knife, I'm going to get a little bit over here just to get something started. Something like that. Now, a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the mountain mixture, and a little bit of white. Let's see if we can make up a interesting shadow color. Something like that. Look at that, that's nice and shadowy. And as we do, we always go the opposite direction. Highlights in this scene are going to the right, so we've got shadows going the opposite. Now I've got a bit bigger of a peak here, so I'll use the long edge. Down and out. Again, look how light, just barely skimming. A little bit in there. Maybe a little thicker. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up. Unfortunately, I didn't make enough at once here. That's all right. We can always make a little more. I think it was a little darker than that. This first layer of highlights here. There we go. I'm going to create a little action here. Maybe a whole new range kind of coming out. And when you don't add so much shadow here, it makes it easy for you just to cover it right on up with a bit of a highlight. highlights mean new shadows. We got to get a shadow right off of that new ridge line we created. Maybe another little ridge line right there. Picking out a couple of spots here and there. Any of these little gaps, figure out which ones need a shadow. Something like that. I have a little bit more highlight here. I do. I think this is something's just bugging me about that. That's a little better. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come on here with some straight, pure titanium white. Get off a little roll there, and maybe in certain spots. It's catching the light a certain way. So we start to see some highlights to the highlight. Now, it wouldn't really look right if you just covered every bit of the first highlight with the pure white, but a little bit will help really set this off. So we've got some chunky paint here, right? This first layer of highlights. So even lighter, if possible. We just want that first layer of highlights, that sort of a light gray, just to pull off that pure white highlight without us thinking about it too much. You get a little bit of that falling over into the shadow, adds a little something there. What I did is I took a little bit of the white and the shadow, didn't really mix it, just let it get a little marbly and just put a little bit of highlight to those shadows. Just let it zing off. That's it. There we go. Quick, dirty, move on. All right, let me clean out my 1-inch brush here super quick. And for this step here, I like to have a paper towel at the ready, and I'm going to create some mist here just by tapping. Wipe it off, give it a little upward pull. It just travels a little bit. Creating some mist, following the same basic angles of your peaks here. And then very gently blur, blur, blur. Ooh, that mountain really took over, didn't it? Didn't really mean to make it that big, but that's all right. Even mistier way back there. Okay, let us make a new color. Let's get rid of this white. And let's get rid of the shadow color. And let's see here. I'm going to take my mountain mix. Oh, a good hunk of that mountain mix. Let's take the rest of that black. Add a touch of brown. And a nice little lump of phthalo green. It's been a while since I've used some phthalo green. I find it very alpine-like green. Makes a really good background color. Let me find myself a nice short little scrubby little fan brush. This fan brush has seen a few. Let me get a different one here. This one's a little newer. Not so many busted up bristles because I get a little rough and tough with them sometimes. If you're careful with them, you can get these to last many, many paintings. If you beat the heck out of them like I do, they'll run out a little sooner. So let's go ahead and take it easy on these brushes today. I'm not cracking them in as hard as I normally do. Get some nice little points happening up here. Get some paint, chop them in. Get some paint, chop them in. And if there's any trick to these, it's tapping down, see that? And reloading the brush often. That'll give you those nice spiky looking trees. If you want them a little wider, you don't really care about making them super pointy, you can just kind of keep going with them. But if you want those nice, clean, pointier looking ones, just reload that brush often. Now, what am I doing here? I think this is just going to keep on going. Maybe we'll figure it out. Loading, smoothing. Load, smooth. Don't try to just load by smoothing. You need a lot of paint up here in the brush. Sometimes when I get going here, especially now I'm 2/3, 3/4 of the way, tendency is just to try to do too much at once. Give yourself a minute here and take it slow. Fill them in. Get it just right. But not so much that you're spending all day on it. I know, what does he mean by that, right? It's like, take your time and get it in there the way you like it. Don't feel the need to just keep hitting it all day long and keep going over and over the same bits. See, I'm just going to make these a little longer, a little bit more, just by tapping. I'm not loading any more paint. I'm just using the paint that's already there and just filling in some of this gap. Okay. Now, wiping out most of the paint here, I'm going to take this and I'm going to create what we call the lay of the land just by changing the angle and tapping. And we're creating some flat look to it. Same thing here. Just going to chop them off, cut it off wherever you want, and we'll create the shadows of all this like prairie or grass, prairie grass. Not as much paint here, so I do pick up a little bit on my brush. Just tap. All I want to get is some indications here of some grass. I like it. All right, I'll tell you what. You can also take your 1-inch brush to make this. See that? Happens even faster. There we go. All right, let us see. I've got myself a newer 1-inch brush here. I want these bristles to be not so puffy. I'm going to take just a very small hint of liquid white, and I'm going to pull some through, back and forth, tapping, loading some color, maybe a little bit of that phthalo green, maybe a little yellow ochre in there. I don't know, we're going to find a color here that makes sense to us. Pulling back and forth, you see those bristles starting to collapse? Getting some paint up in there, right up on the tips of the bristles. So we can create some grass just by tapping. Nice little taps. Change the color now and again. I add a little bit of yellow ochre to add some little interest there. As Bob says, change the flavor. If you're having trouble getting it to come off, just that single drop of the liquid white will loosen it up there for you, and it will come off a lot easier. Try to figure out how your land is flowing. Drop it in and move on. I'm moving away from the bright, letting that color mix with the dark. Let it get duller and duller. And then come back and add some more highlights. Working light against dark, dark against light. Some of these little sections here create hills just by changing up the color. The lights and darks working together. Allow it to work. Allow it to happen. The more you go over it, the softer and more velvety it can get. So you're going to have to decide for yourself how much to keep going over and over it. Okay. I'm going to say over here on this side, less cadmium yellow and a little bit more yellow ochre, just to give a little different interest on this section here. Something like that. Maybe a little bit brighter there. If it's a little too strong, just tap it a couple times. It'll settle down. I almost think I could have a little lake here. I don't know. I don't know. Might change my mind here. But no, gotta have some happy trees here. So I've got my background color. I'll tell you what, I'm going to darken it a little bit with some brown, just a touch more the phthalo green, maybe even a touch of the phthalo blue. Maybe even a little bright red. That bright red will mix with the blue and make a purple color. It'll mix with the green to make a brown color. So basically it'll just dull and darken everything down. Having things a little darker as they get in front of you, to the front of the scene, that's desirable. Let's see here. Get back into my fan brush. Load plenty of color. Let's add a couple of evergreens here. Tap, 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 tap. Whoop. Now make sure your brush is loaded properly. Still looked a little weird. There we go. Best part of this painting here is anything you don't like, we put a tree in front of it. Never know it was there. If you think you messed up on a certain spot, well, you get to change things. This is a great painting to practice your mountains, a great painting to practice your trees. You think you need a little more tree practice, just drop in more trees. It's pretty forgiving here. Maybe there's going to be some little bush stuff happening under these trees. See that? Fills in that gap there. And let's just keep making trees. It's a little easier dropping trees in where there's not so much thick paint underneath. But if this paint is a slightly thinner consistency, you can get it to stick to that titanium white without too much trouble. Just make sure your brush is loaded and be bold. We've got a line of trees here. Maybe these trees are a little closer together in some spots. Here. Once your tree starts lightening up, it's just time to reload. Depending on your brush and your style here, you may need to load that brush several times for one tree. Maybe not. Every time it's a little bit different. You just have to kind of go with the flow and adjust things on the fly. Look at that. We got a nice little thing happening here. Great spot to put some trees right in this sort of dead space here. Not much going on this side of the mountain, so let's fill it in and give it something to do. Give these trees somewhere to grow. There we are. I like it. Maybe even another tree. You just keep going and going until it looks right to you. And maybe there's a couple little things off in the background here. We don't know. to take my knife, no paint on the knife, and let's make a couple little stalks here. Those nice little one hair things Bob talks about. Just by pushing some of that paint past the top, really add something special there, just that little tiny bit. And then maybe a couple little sticks here and there, just with whatever paint I'm picking up. Create some little things in the background, little extra trees. You see that right there? Here and there, a couple little thingies. It's a technical term, little thingies. There we go. Then I'm going to take this brush and put some more grass here, I think. There you go. At some point, it gets really tough to do with the fan brush. So you can always come by here and just, well, we would take care of it with the 1-inch brush in a heartbeat. See that? Oh, that's so much faster. As long as it's relatively dark, we don't really care. Ooh, grabbed a little bit of brown in there. That's to help fill that in. That liquid white will keep lightening up as you keep going over it. So add a little more dark color there. That'll keep it nice and bold in the foreground. All right, so let me clean out that fan brush. Oof, got some paint way up into the metal part of the fan brush. That's no good. But this paint doesn't dry super quick, so we can get it out there before it settles in and ruins the brush. Just might take a little extra work. Okay, so a little bit of the liquid white. Start bringing that cadmium yellow through. Maybe a touch of the phthalo blue or phthalo green. Plenty of paint on the brush. All right, let's see about highlighting these little guys here. When it comes to highlighting, light touch. That paint should come off very easily. If it doesn't, well, you either need a little more paint on your brush or it needs to be just a slight bit thinner. And what I like to do here is I kind of think of this as in sections. Okay, I'm using here in the middle, I'm using the middle of my fan brush and I'm tapping to make this little frown. And I tap, doot, 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 doot. Leave some dark, do a couple little tappers, move on down. I think I'm going to have some bushes here, so I'm not even going to go all the way. You want to create the illusion of depth here and things in front of things. Just stop before you get too low, so you have room to cover up that bottom bit. Now at the top of these trees you'll see I have my brush over and down for righties or over to the left and down for lefties. That way you're just touching a little bit of the bristles. So once you get into the body of the tree, the middle part, that's when you bring your handle over and give it a little tapper. Tap, 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 tap. Another hot tip for you. If you're having struggles getting it off, when you smooth your brush, give it a little press forward, just a little bit, so you can get some right on the tips of your bristles. But don't be afraid to let some of those darks remain. The darks are your good friends, just as much as the highlights. We need them both. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to actually use the black-handled oval brush. I love using this to make bushes. So a little bit of the liquid white, maybe a little bit of this cad yellow, Indian yellow, not even Indian yellow, yellow ochre is what I meant to say. Thinning that down and getting some right up here on the tips of the bristles. See that? Tip, tip, tip. Let's see if I can show you here. See that? That little bit of tapping gives it that little push. Gets that paint right up on the tips of the bristles. I come up here, just make a little section here. Reload. Make a little section. Reload. Like that. You can create layers here. One little section at a time. Maybe a little bit here. Are these growing all the way across? We don't really know. Don't need them all the same color. Change them up a little bit. Some are brighter, some are duller. I'm running out of paint, so I gotta change up my choices here. Oh, look at that. I even forgot to highlight that tree. That's all right. All right, so I'm going to, well, there you go. I need to get a little more paint, don't I? Forgive my melon head coming across here. I'm gonna get my cadmium yellow. And I've got my 1-inch brush. A little bit of that liquid white. Back and forth. Grab a little bit of the phthalo blue. Ooh, that blue is strong. It can get away from you. And let's just see about dropping in a little bit of grass here. Come right under those bushes. Look how it just chops them off. filling it in, let it get maybe a little darker and duller as you move to the corners. If it's a little too dull, add a little highlight to it. Add another little section. There we go. What I've been trying lately here is those little zings of sunlight Bob talks about here. So you get done with your highlights, and as we did with the mountains here, we're going to add a little bit of highlight to the highlight. A couple of spots here where it's just a little bit brighter. Here and there. Just where the sun is just catching it just right. There we go. Now in doing so, I didn't mean to kill off all that prairie grass off in the background there, but you know, that sometimes happens when we're building our scene, especially with this smaller canvas size. You kind of lose a little sometimes. That's okay. So, that being said, I think we've got ourselves a finished painting. I'm going to sign this baby and get it uploaded. And thank you so much for sticking with me. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.